Welcome to this special indictment edition of LOOPcast, where we are going to cover all things faith, culture, and politics from a Catholic perspective related to the Trump indictment. Today, I am joined by Brian Burch, president of CatholicVote. Welcome, Brian.
Well, happy to be here on National Indictment Day.
Yeah, here we are. So I'm just going to set it up for our listeners. If you're not aware, if you've been living under a rock, or if you've been homeschooling your children like your primary vocation, and you missed it, on March 30th, a New York grand jury voted to indict President Donald Trump. According to the New York Times, New York Attorney General Alvin Bragg brought the case over Mr. Trump's role in a 2016 hush money payment to a porn star, Stormy Daniels, who then agreed to keep quiet about her story of an affair with him, which Trump denies. Prosecutors are expected, we don't have the details yet, but they're expected to argue that the payoff, which came in the final days of Trump's presidential campaign, functioned as an illegal donation to Mr. Trump's candidacy. So big news, Brian. Is this a triumph or a tragedy for the American justice system?
Well, as all things politics and all things Trump, I think it's a lot more complicated than just saying yes or no. Obviously, from a political / public culture standpoint, this decision to indict a former president is unprecedented. We have never had a president of the United States indicted in this for a crime after he's left office. So this is a historical event by some standards. Secondly, I think if you actually start to look at the law here and you start to look at the background of this DA and the politics behind it and the money behind it, it's very clear that this is essentially what I call a political joyride. There is almost very little chance that they are successful with this, and the clear purpose of this effort is to tarnish the former president for political reasons, and it's turned really the judicial system into people are calling banana republic or really a farce. And I speak specifically because this DA has some responsibility to exercise discretion in what he chose and whether to bring the charges that he has brought. And the law, I think here, and we can talk about that in a second, is very clear that this is a huge stretch. How this plays out politically, obviously, will be determined, but I do think net, this is very helpful to the former president. As in many things with Trump, certainly all the oxygen in the political world is all consumed by him. He is the center of attention. And if history is a lesson, when Donald Trump is the center of attention, it typically is a big advantage for him.
Sure. So what do you think the political strategy is going into something like this to make a stretch? I mean, Alvin Bragg, he campaigned, he was elected on his promise that he would prosecute Trump. So it's one of those sort of Soviet-style cases of, show me the man and I'll show you the crime. What is the strategy here? Do you think that the left really believes that by indicting him, they're somehow going to prevent him from running or prevent him from being elected again?
So you assume there's the big rational plan
Oh,
here.
there's
Yes,
my
right.
mistake.
When it comes to political hatred, I think there's often reason is tossed to the curb, and it becomes, by any means necessary, destroy this man. We've seen this from the Russian hoax to two impeachments to all sorts of claims that at any moment, just we're right on the cusp of finally putting this man behind bars for good. This has been the hope and dream of everyone from Rachel Maddow and MSNBC to anyone that hated Trump with a passion for the last 6 years. Now, this is the latest potential moment where they think we just finally have gotten him. Unfortunately, I think of all the ways in which they may have gotten him, this is probably one of the weakest cases they made to date.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit. So over a week before he was actually indicted, Trump predicted that he would be arrested. And of course, this, as you said, sucked all of the oxygen out of the room, made him the focus of all media attention. And so we started to dig into a little, what could the charges be? And we're looking at a felony. We do know it's probably going to be at the level of a felony, but there's some issue going on with whether this is even going to stand up in court. You're saying no. There's a statute of limitations question. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the legal problematics here?
Yeah, well, first, for full disclosure, I'm not a lawyer, but I do understand at least a little bit of the law here because I'm involved in all things political. So he's being accused, as you said, of paying an attorney who was making a payment to presumably a woman that he made a mistake with. We don't know if that's true. He's denied it, of course. I don't even like using this kind of hush money phrase. He obviously is a celebrity has a big public stature, and he has reasons, as all celebrities do, to make payments to people, to have them behave in a certain way that helps him maintain his image. I don't have that problem, thankfully, but he does, and he certainly has made some mistakes in his life where he has a right as an individual person to try to remedy those problems. Let's put it that way. The statute of limitations in New York, by the way, is expired. So they can no longer claim that he didn't properly classify his payments to his attorney. The only reason this is now relevant is they've essentially linked this misclassification of a business expense to a crime, and that makes it the potential felony. And what's the crime? That, as you suggested, that he did not properly disclose this as a political expenditure. And that means if he was making a payment for political purposes exclusively to help his campaign for the presidency, then he did have an obligation to disclose that payment to the FEC. Now, there's a lot of history here. Of course, lots of people make payments that may help them politically, but could have been motivated for other reasons. It could have been motivated because he wanted to protect his own marriage, because he wanted to protect his brand of his hotels and his businesses, because he just didn't want to look dumb in front of the public. This prosecutor now has to prove that the exclusive and sole purpose of this payment was to help his candidacy for president. That is a stretch, and I think everyone knows it. There's case law on this, of course. John Edwards, a candidate for president, paid off a woman for whom he had a relationship and a child with, and even that case was not upheld in court. And see, the prosecutor knows this. This is a big stretch. In fact, when he first came into office, he begged off of this case. He thought there wasn't enough there to prosecute. Two of the prosecutors in his office resigned in protest, including one who wrote a book, which is outrageous, about how the case against Donald Trump, an ongoing investigation, wrote a book and tried to monetize it. The other interesting question here is the Justice Department itself had a chance to prosecute President Trump for this crime. The question exclusively of the felony was looked at, and they declined to bring charges because they didn't think there was enough there. Because frankly, there's not. If Donald Trump can make any convincing case that he had other reasons other than exclusively his own campaign to make this payment to his attorney, this case falls apart. Now, the risk that he has is who's going to decide that question? It's going to be a jury of his peers, and a jury of his peers selected from where? The district in New York where this jury will be selected. And so who knows what kind of jury you get in New York City. This is, I forget what the numbers were, but Donald Trump didn't exactly run away with the race there. And so there's a good chance that this jury will not be politically well disposed to him. That said, the role of a jury is to decide the law in consultation and guidance with the judge. And I think once they actually look at the facts, look at the case law, look at the history, this case is going nowhere. This is just a political bomb thrown into the middle of a campaign to try to harm his re-election bid. And we'll, as we've done with many of these Trump things, move on to the next thing. And they have certainly a couple more bullets in the gun legally that they're looking at, whether it's Georgia or the Mar-a-Lago case, or the, even more far-fetched, the January 6th case that somehow he's responsible for the insurrection.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like just the latest in an ongoing political witch hunt here. So I wanted to ask you, sort of long term, what do you see if Trump is exonerated in court? Two-part question. If Trump is exonerated of these charges, what do you see the impact being on, one, the American people's trust in our system of government, and two, the 2024 election itself?
Yeah, well, the first question is a really important question, and that is we hear all this talk about the threats to our democracy and the threats to our institutions. It's really important that we have, as a people, trust that the law is adjudicated and applied in an equal way. And when we start seeing prosecutors acting for what is clearly and obviously political reasons, that begins to start to break down that trust. And so what happens next? You have prosecutors now going after Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, Bill Clinton. What about when Biden gets out of office? What about Hunter Biden? Is it now the law just a tool that we use and weaponize to try to punish our political opponents? Well, that's how third world country banana republics operate. And to the extent this leads to a breakdown in that trust, I think that's very worrisome. Politically, how this plays out, I think very likely, assuming this jury is fair, and I have no reason to believe that they won't be other than the New York question, once they actually look at the facts, then we're going to see yet another example of Trump triumphing and making the case to the American people that he has been persecuted and targeted because he's tried to bring real reform to the country. And there's some substance to that. Is Trump perfect? By no means. He's certainly made many, many mistakes in his life and many mistakes as a politician. I think the misstep here is the left thinks that if they keep bringing these efforts, eventually you're going to finally get him, or they're going to tar him so much that he's going to have trouble raising money, or that, as we recently saw, that the American public will be so soured. And really, this is probably a perfect example that we'll be so tired of Trump, that Trump fatigue will be so great that his viability as a candidate will be exhausted. And there's a real possibility that occurs as well.
Yeah, well, so even within CatholicVote, we see different takes on Trump and different predictive elements going on about the election, the primaries especially. So, for people who've already jumped ship from Trump to DeSantis, is there a Catholic case for Trump in 2024?
There's absolutely a case. There's a great Catholic case for DeSantis. There's a great Catholic case for a number of candidates, and there is a Catholic case for Trump. I think the Catholic case for Trump is the country is at a crossroads in a way that we've never been, and we need candidates, whomever they are, to have the courage to disrupt the system, to stand against the grain, whether it be in your own party as a Republican or certainly against the establishment, the Democratic Party, which, increasingly more and more hostile against everything we believe as Catholics. And if courage is that single most important virtue, apart from all the policy questions, there's no question that Trump is the leader there. He's proven time and again, he proved it with judges, he proved it when he was in office, that he has, the strength to stand up. Now, do some of these other candidates, certainly Ron DeSantis as governor, and the way he's led that state makes a very good case as well. But I think this is not a disqualifier for Catholics for Trump by any means.
All right. Well, what a time to be alive. Brian, thank you so much for your commentary and coming on.
Great to be with you. Thank you so much for having me.